guess because I only ever saw one video, he just completely left my mind. I don't know, I can't be gay anymore. I don't know who Onision is! My brain hurts. My brain is numb. My whole body is numb right now. I'm transgender. Onision's not trans. Is he? Currently, I'm working on another project very similar to this one that'll be out shortly. You're fully intending on making a second part, aren't you? Hey everyone, I have merch now. I have a Redbubble where you can go and get stickers that have things that I've said on them. So currently we have the There Is No God Only Taco Bell and Get Yourself a Trans Man. So if you would like stickers with things I've said, they're on Redbubble. You can type in MostlyLee and it'll come right up. There's 2 out right now, but there are plans to have more in the future. So if you want merch of MostlyLee, it's out there. But aside from that, today we're going to be talking about Onision again. This is actually a part 2 to the original video I made, where I discovered Onision and watched some of his videos. So if you haven't seen that, you can go watch it. It's not really necessary to see this video though, just because that's more of me reacting to seeing a lot of his videos for the first time. My original idea for this video was to kind of look into him as a person and sort of delve into the drama that's been surrounding him for the past few, I guess, years now. Unfortunately, I don't have any new information. I've watched a lot of videos about the drama surrounding Onision, be it his pedophilia allegations, or his domestic abuse allegations, or his destroying of local wetlands. I don't know. Since I couldn't make anything different from the, let me just check the number here, 35 billion videos made about Onision, I decided I'm going to do something a little different. I say a little different just because there are videos on this topic about him, but it was something that I feel like I have a little bit more credence to talk about. So for those of you who don't know, Onision has a spouse. Somehow. Don't know how that happened. Apparently he's done it multiple times. But he has a spouse currently who goes by the name Kai. Kai is transgender, FTM, and Onision has some interesting opinions about trans people. I'm pretty sure that Kai's transition is relatively new within the whole saga that is Onision's life. I think this has only been like the past 2 years, or maybe even the past year, that it's really been a bigger deal. Now, I understand that Kai's probably been dealing with gender dysphoria and how they perceive their gender probably for years, maybe even before they met Onision, but I don't care. I don't feel the desire to talk about Kai at all right now, just because I didn't know who Onision was. I know even less about Kai or Lanybot. What do they go by on the internet? Is it still Lanybot? I don't give a shit. What I care about is Onision, and specifically his views on trans people and the trans community, because he's made a lot of videos about us. For anyone who doesn't know, I am transgender myself. I am FTM, so I do have a little bit of authority on the topic, probably way more than Onision has. I don't think just being married to a trans dude gives you enough authority to really talk about trans issues. I mean, if he made a video about what it was like to be married to a trans guy, sure. But that's not what he does at all. What he decides to do with his time is to make videos about trans people, presumably for trans people. Like, some of the videos I saw have titles that don't insinuate that he's talking about, like, his experience as a trans person's spouse, more so that he's trying to teach trans people how to be trans right? So what I'm going to be doing today is watching the videos where he discusses transgender issues and transgender people, and we're going to just dive right in. I'm going to try to dissect this to the best of my ability and try to stay as calm as possible. I don't want to attack Onision as a person too much, just because I still don't have 100% of the context about him. Now, since my last video, I filmed that a solid month ago and then uploaded it recently just because life happens. So I knew a lot less than I do now. Since I filmed that video, I've been doing a lot of research, and by research I mean watching YouTube videos. I've watched a ton of YouTube videos about this guy from all different creators, and pretty much what I can say is I don't think I like him, but that's neither here nor there. I haven't really watched much of his actual content since then, just because it's not really the kind of stuff I like to watch in general. He just doesn't make videos that are up my alley, which is probably why I didn't know who he was for the longest time. But now, I'm gonna go back and watch some videos. Owie. Last time I did watch his video where he said that he was transgender, and I'm still trying to recover from that. We're not actually gonna watch that one. This one is gonna be more so him talking to the trans community, and I am not ready. So I'm gonna be tackling this in order of seriousness. This is just essentially gonna be in order of how serious I think he's being in these videos. So the first video we're gonna look at was uploaded February 13th of 2017, and it's called in all caps, the trans song. And this is on the main Onision channel. We're actually going to be jumping between channels this time. Let's dive right in. I'm already in pain.
Hey guys, first off, I want to talk about how serious I know this issue is. I don't think it's okay to joke about this, and I just hope that you guys can respect what I'm about to reveal to all of you.
I am trans and I am awesome. This isn't even my final form. I am trans and I am awesome.
To be fair, I know I did this last time, like I really should watch the full video before saying something like this. But same, I am trans, and I am awesome. And fuck everybody else. But I have a feeling we're about to hit a turn.
So got these tits, it's time to transform. Big old boobs, yeah, I have those now. Putting on my makeup, eyeliner, and my brows. I am trans, I am awesome. This isn't even my final form. Trans girl dance, trans girl dance, trans girl dance isn't even my final form. I am trans, I'm a transformer.
I just don't know anymore. So, clearly, Onision, we get the joke. It's transformer and transgender. Both have trans in the name. Isn't he clever? So that's whatever. I do like the like to dislike ratio on this video. It's got like almost 9,000 likes, but a solid 3,000 dislikes, which is not great. I just scrolled down into the comment section. Someone said, "Okay, boomer." Onision isn't even a boomer, but I love that. Okay, boomer. So that is just shitty Onision music. We've experienced enough of that before. But you know what I want? You know what I really want today? You know what I'm having a craving for? A Taco Bell bean burrito. But aside from that, I want to see something problematic. I want to jump right into something that's gonna hurt me. I want to get mad. And I saw he made a video called Dear Trans People. That's me. Hi, I'm trans people. Hello. What could you possibly have to say to me, Onision? Me, a trans people. I'm very afraid to watch this video. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be 100% with you guys. I am terrified to watch this video and see what Onision could possibly have to say.
I have a message I want to share with the trans community. Not LGBT, just trans.
Gays, get the fuck out!
People have this thing called transgender. They invented it. They made it up. If you are less valid than another trans person, because that's what people like me do. You know, vanilla people. People who are lucky enough to be born identifying as what they are. That's what we do to the entire trans community. We tell you guys that you're not valid as a whole. So what needs to be said is that I think that people who alter their body, like if they're born with this, and they don't want this, then they get surgery and then it's gone. There are a lot of risks that go with that surgery, and if they go on T, there are a lot of side effects, unpleasant ones.
There are no unpleasant side effects to tea. I'm gonna be honest, the unpleasant side effects to tea are just things that testosterone does. I love my unpleasant side effects to being on tea. Haven't been on it for a crazy amount of time, but bro, I love it. I love every part of being on tea. I felt so much better, like, about my body, about, like, just my entire existence after getting on tea. Great idea. And there are risks with any surgery. He's like, oh, there are a lot of risks with getting rid of this. Yeah, there are a lot of risks with getting your appendix removed, Greg. That's what surgery is. It's risky, but people do it to stay alive.
Now, here's something I've been seeing more as of late, and that is people who have been altered, people who have cut off their male parts, or people who have cut off their female parts, looking at people who haven't done that, acting like they're not in the cool kids club yet because they haven't done that.
To be fair, a lot of what the trans community does, like, in regards to transgenders and, like, fake trans people, has nothing to do with where you are in your transition. A lot of that ends up being, like, people who say they don't have any dysphoria at all, have no desire to transition, have no desire to change their pronouns, but still say they're trans. That's where that comes from. I've never met a trans person that's looked at another trans person who hasn't gotten, like, top surgery or breast implants or bottom surgery and been like, you're not trans enough. We don't do that. At least I don't think we do. Oh god, are we doing that?
My point is that not everybody feels so strongly about their own body that they want to mutilate it. And that is, of course, the definition of mutilation. My tattoos are mutilation, piercings are mutilation. What many people do to male babies and female babies at birth is mutilation. So you want to mutilate your own body and...
Fun fact, that's not what the definition of mutilation is. The actual definition is the infliction of serious damage on something. So, by your own standards, tattoos and piercings aren't really that serious. Putting in earrings, not that serious of damage. You know, doing tattoo work, it's not that serious. Now, I will say, you know, top surgery might fall into that. Bottom surgery might fall into that. But you're not just inflicting damage for the sake of damage. It's not like you just go in there and they take a machete to your tit. You walk out with, like, medically done, like, stitches and everything. Like, you leave being in one piece, just missing a good portion of piece. Thank goodness. If I could get rid of these pieces, someone get rid of my pieces for me. People who use the word mutilation when they're referring to, like, trans people and the surgeries we get are really just people who don't like trans people. A lot of TERFs will say that, and a lot of, like, really conservative people will call it mutilation because they think it's scary and it'll make people be like, oh, trans people are crazy. They mutilate their bodies. Like...
You guys call them transgenders. Treat it like a gang initiation. Like you're not a part of us until you've been physically beaten down.
No one's doing that. Who's doing that, Greg? Can you provide examples? Can you provide names of people who are doing that? Because if you can't, you're just making shit up. You're just making it up that trans people are doing this. And I'm sure there are some shitty trans people out there that do have a superiority complex about being, like, completely transitioned. I'm gonna say 99% of the trans community does not give a shit where you are in your transition. Like, no one is trying to make this an initiation game.
And that is a mental sickness. You being trans, I don't think that's a mental sickness. I think that's a mental difference. But you being so toxic to other human beings where they feel the need to, by definition, harm their body just so they can feel more accepted by you. None of us should ever shame people for being too trans or not trans enough.
Too trans? What is too trans? How can I be... I want to find out how to be too trans. I want to be so trans that I have ascended. I want to reach nirvana of transness. Someone tell me how to become too trans, like right now.
But I will definitely shame you for being an absolute garbage human being towards other people, encouraging them to pointlessly harm themselves for the sake of feeling validated by you.
Oh, Onision, you think it's bad for other people to shame other people? Let's talk about how you've shamed people into trying to lose weight for your approval. Is that not literally the same as what you're talking about? The thing that no trans people are doing? The thing that you do? And maybe it's not your definition of mutilation to tell young girls they're too fat and need to lose weight, but it's definitely harming their body image and making them make extreme changes to their body for the approval of you, a 36-year-old man.
That's like a cult. So, hopefully this video will have some positive impact and get all these monsters who like to tell other people that they're not good enough, that they haven't mutilated themselves enough to be part of the team.
Oh, this is fucking hilarious. So he's going on his tirade about how terrible the trans community is. And the video's coming to an end, so it gave me like a recommended video. Makeup versus no makeup, before and after. Onision, you literally shame people all the time about who they are and how they look. You have no position on this topic. Yeah, I will say this, if you make people feel bad about their bodies in any way, you're a terrible person. But to sit there in front of a camera and say, oh, trans community, you're terrible for doing this to your own members. Onision, you do this to people all the time. That was a video from 2018. I have no idea where Kai was in his transition at that point. I don't care. But that video is only like 6 minutes long, so that's, you know, whatever. That's just him yelling at trans people. After that video, a few months after, in October of 2018, Onision decided he needed to make another video at the trans community. I think he just realized that putting transgender in your title will get you views, but he has a video called Gender Dysphoria, Your Gender Identity, Are You Valid? Transgender community reaction. I don't even want to look at this because I know he's just gonna be railing on the trans community for no goddamn reason. It sucks so hard. Like, being trans is not fun. Like, it's just not a fun time. You go through so much, like, just mental anguish about your body, and just being like railed on by someone like Onision definitely doesn't help. And I'm so tired of cisgender people thinking they have a position on transgender rights, what trans people are allowed to do with their body, when trans people are allowed to decide they're trans. I'm just tired of all of it because there are so many like cis YouTubers that will make comments about the trans community, like Onision, of course, and then you have people like, what's her name, Trisha Papaya, I don't even know, who made that whole video that blew up recently about her being trans, and that's a troll. That's a wonderful troll we got there. But when you have people like fucking Onision here thinking that he has any position, I'm gonna say this, just because you're in a relationship with a trans person doesn't mean you have the right to talk about trans issues. Like, you can definitely share your experiences, but don't try to act like an authority. Maybe that's problematic. Was that problematic to say? Am I gonna get yelled at in the comments? I don't really care. So let's see what cisman Onision possibly has to say about gender dysphoria.
Because I was born a certain way, I'm not allowed to have an opinion on an issue.
You don't.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just hide your comment. The reason I hide comments is because nobody wants to see that. Like, nobody, like...
So the first 2 minutes of this video actually has nothing to do with this topic. It just has to do with the fact that he gets a lot of hate comments.
Just hateful hate. Hateful, hateful hate.
Wonder why that is. This 20-minute video, already off to a great start, not even talking about the topic.
And the reason I'm actually using a Twitter poll is because most of the time they are valid. They do actually reflect people's opinions, especially when they don't have incentive to lie.
If you post a poll as Onision to your Onision Twitter, your fans do have an incentive to lie. They're just gonna agree with whatever they know your position already is so they can validate you. Like, that's what fans do. They'll just agree with things people they like say just so they can validate the person they're a fan of more. So I don't think maybe this poll is accurate, Onision.
So there's a good chance this is valid. There's a good chance this is fair. Basically, half of people who are trans like being trans. Half of people who are trans do not like being trans.
What does that even mean? What did you even mean by that?
You know, gender dysphoria. Nobody likes having it. This, I feel like it's a little frustrating to hear. It's a little frustrating to just generally deal with because here's the thing. You are who you are, right? No changing that. Don't you think it's a little bit miserable to just look at your body and hate it? As a result, they loathe themselves for this gender dysphoria. They say, oh man, I really wish I was born in a boy's body or a girl's body. And so a lot of them go so far as to mutilate their body, and it is by definition mutilation. They
Here he goes with the mutilation again.
Their breasts, they will cut off their male genitalia, they will get fake breasts, they will sometimes get fake genitalia or modified genitalia and so forth.
Yes, hello, doctor. I would like a modified genitalia, please. Please provide me with the most modified dick you're capable of creating. Thank you. Mwah.
This is clearly something that isn't healthy because there's so many risks that come with it. Like, for instance, just going on T alone, testosterone can make you bald. You could lose your hair. Like, who wants to be a bald dude?
I don't really want to go bald either. Like, my hairline is already eating out of the fucking house right now. But, like, some bald dudes are sexy. And I don't think trying to, like, scare young trans dudes with the threat of baldness is very cool. Like, that was my biggest fear starting T. I was like, what if I go bald? And then I was like, do I want to be bald or do I want to be happy? Ultimately, I decided on happiness, but the second I start going bald, I'm gonna be just a little bit like, oh, that sucks.
A lot of trans people online seem to be very aggressive towards others. They seem to feel very, very self-loathing. They seem to basically be making channels entirely dedicated to, you don't have an opinion that's valid, you don't have a life that's valid.
Where is the proof? Where's the proof of this?
But I see this small group of very loud trans people who feel like they should be the gatekeepers, who feel like they should decide who is or is not a valid trans person. Then these same trans people will go and admit that they hate being trans.
I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I feel like the only reason Onision made this video is because he specifically has beef with some trans YouTubers, and instead of, like, trying to work that out, like, with the YouTubers he has a beef with, he's gonna call out the entire trans community and try to act like the trans community as a whole is terrible just because, like, one YouTuber called him shitty and they happen to be trans. That's what this kind of feels like. So, I don't know, because, like, I want to see the proof of this, because I'm trans and I'm on the internet all day long. I don't have a life. I'm literally just hanging out on the internet, and I don't see this apparent level of, like, toxicity that he's saying he sees. Maybe it's because you're a cis dude, and maybe a bunch of trans people just don't like you because you're constantly making opinions and, like, statements about our community with no experience in it.
They'll go and admit that they hate having dysphoria. They'll go and admit that they hate themselves to the extent that they think they're lesser than other people. So my question is, how can you listen to these people, the people who hate themselves?
So gender dysphoria is like a thing. When you go to a clinic to try to get on hormones like testosterone or estrogen or whatever, most of the time they make you talk to like a mental health specialist or a counselor to, you know, try to decipher why you want to do this, and you will get diagnosed with dysphoria. So Onision and anyone else who needs to hear this, trans people don't decide to hate themselves. We don't just hate ourselves for no reason. It's like we have a brain thing that's telling us we're wrong. And, like, being trans is not a mental disorder or a mental disability, but gender dysphoria definitely kind of skirts that line. Like, I have mild dysphoria, like, TMI, I guess, but because it's relevant. I don't mind my chest that much. Do I want top surgery? Hell yeah. But it doesn't give me extreme dysphoria. And, like, same with my bottom half. It's mostly, like, my voice and the way my face looks and, like, sort of the way I carried myself would give me dysphoria. And everyone's a little bit different because it's a mental thing. So, like, everyone's levels of dysphoria are different. And if you're trans or you identify as trans, chances are you have some level of dysphoria. And, like, for him to come out here and say that, like, oh, these people hate themselves, so who are they to think they're authorities on being trans? Because every trans person kind of hates themselves. That's the point of being trans. If we were comfortable in our bodies and with our gender at birth, we wouldn't be trans. We wouldn't be transitioning. And I know he's probably not doing this, but this is, like, insinuating that trans people choose to be trans, and that's kind of, like, fucked up. Because, like, no one would choose to do this. Like, every trans person is not having fun necessarily being trans. Like, transitioning can have its fun parts. Like, when my voice started to drop, I was ecstatic. But, like, being trans as a whole is not a fun experience. Yeah, we have trans pride, but, like, it's so taxing. It is mentally and physically taxing. And the fact that, like, it is such a process and so difficult, no one would choose to do this. So, like, fuck you. Like, just fuck you, dude.
Because if the people could hear me, then they would actually say, oh my god, what this person's promoting is trans people loving themselves more. What this person's promoting is trans people being more accepting of one another. But instead, what people do is they latch on to one specific person and they act like because that person is 100% accepted, everything I say is wrong. They have emotions connected to others, and because those others are so closely connected to them, anyone saying anything about that person blurs their vision.
Yeah, he's just mad that a trans YouTuber probably called him out. Is it Calvin Guerra? Is that who it is? Is it Blair White? Are you mad that Blair White probably called you out, Onision? Maybe I should, like, know more about Onision to try to, like, decipher, like, what's going on. But the fact that to even watch a single video of his, you kind of need to know the lore, like, that kind of sucks. Because I'm sitting here very adamantly believing at this point that he's just mad that some trans YouTubers probably were talking shit about him. I don't know, that's what it sounds like, right? Or maybe I'm just, like, projecting.
Trans people to know, and I will continue speaking on the benefit or to help trans people.
Please don't.
Your dysphoria isn't a curse. In this time and age is a liberation. You have been given the opportunity to not be like everyone else.
What the fuck does that mean?
You could be whatever gender you want. You could call yourself whatever you want. And anybody who doesn't accept you for that is just an asshole. Okay? Like Calvin Guerra.
I knew it! I knew that's what this was. I could feel it. I called it. I fucking called it.
Calvin thinks that he is special in this whole different area. You know, like Calvin gets their own, and I say there because it's a neutral reference. It's not misgendering.
No, no, it's a little bit misgendering, because you know that he prefers he, him pronouns, and yet you're using they, them. Look at that smug ass face. Oh my god, he knows what he's doing. He is the smuggest motherfucker right now.
There is not a gender. Duh.
Well, you know, let's pin that over there. Let's take the they them pronouns, just pin them up right there for a hot minute. We'll circle back to that.
But no, Calvin likes to, first of all, admit that he hates himself, and then goes on this thing about how he's different than everybody else, or most everybody else.
So I'm gonna go on this rant as someone who is very Calvin Guerra neutral and also somewhat Onision neutral. Not anymore. I'm getting mad about him now. I've seen a lot of Calvin Guerra's content just as like a trans dude on the internet. I run into it sometimes because it comes up in relevant searches. And from what I've seen with him, which is kind of a lot of his content to be honest, is that he's not trying to be like holier than thou. He's just voicing his opinions on the internet. Something that Onision claims to want to like protect all the time. Like he's so honest and he wants to be able to make these videos where he speaks his truth. Like, unfortunately, Calvin Guerra has that same right, Onision. When Calvin says he hates his body, it's in the same way that I think a lot of trans people hate their body. I don't feel right in my body and I need to do things to alleviate that, and that fucking sucks. Like, I don't hate my body necessarily, I just want it to be different. Like, I'm not trying to attain someone else's body, I just want my body to reflect what I think it should be. And like, most trans people are like that. Like, I'm pretty sure every person who's actually trans has dysphoria and like does have things about their body they want to change, be it the surgeries, the hormones, or just like maybe gaining some muscle mass or losing weight or whatever it is that will affirm their gender more. Do I think you need dysphoria to be trans? I think you need a little bit, at least. Like, there has to be a reason for you to say you're trans. Do I think you need to want to go through the full gambit of procedures and hormones? Not necessarily. Not everyone can afford that. Not everyone's families will be accepting. Some people are in religions that aren't accepting of like transness. And you know what? If they're never able to transition, I feel bad for them if that's something they want. But even if they don't want to go through all of that, whatever. Like, you know, not everyone wants bottom surgery. It's a lot. Like, FTM and MTF, bottom surgery is a long process that is, you know, taxing and expensive and can come with complications. And not everyone wants to go through that. And guess what? Guess what? That's fine. That's totally fine. But that's not really what Onision wants to talk about. I think he just has beef with Calvin Guerra. And that's fucking hilarious. And like, I don't want this to come off as though I'm like on Calvin Guerra's side, which I guess I kinda am. But like, Onision, shut up. Like, you can't go and make a video about gender dysphoria and how trans people, you can't be like, all trans people are valid, and then literally rail on a trans dude. Like,
the point is that Calvin is infused with ego. Calvin is infused with self-loathing. And Calvin wants everybody to know that they're trans, he's trans, God, you guys. And yet here we are again with people trying to defend Calvin, even though Calvin lost last time.
what did Calvin lose? Did they have a fist fight? What did he lose, exactly?
But when you clearly misgender someone, like if I spent this whole time going she, her, in reference to Calvin, I would edit it out, right? If I constantly did that, because that is just downright disrespectful.
I think using that as an example is already disrespectful. Like, bringing up the fact that trans people are trans at all in discussions that aren't inherently relevant to it is super disrespectful, but you still used the wrong pronouns as an example. That's still kind of shitty, dude.
To tell people who can and can't be trans, okay? And I know this is where, like, you know, hardcore conservatives are actually right.
Oh, don't like this. Don't like where this is going at all.
Think that you are just so goddamn unique. Do not get to join the trans community and then start blocking people from joining the trans community. You guys say that gender dysphoria is required to be trans.
Because it is.
Okay? You guys, what you're doing is just like what lesbians and gays did to bisexuals. Like, if you're not gay, if you're not lesbian, then you're not part of LGBT.
But do you want to talk about how gay people try to invalidate and attack trans people all the time? Do you want to talk about that, Onision? No, you don't. Because you're mad that Calvin Guerra said some shit about you. That's the down low of this video. Like, I understand his analogy with, like, the bi community, because they do go through a lot of erasure and, like, a lot of shitty things. Like, gay people will say some shitty things about, you know, people who are bisexual. And that really does suck. And it also sucks that some people in the trans community might be kind of mean. Like, I understand why people don't like a lot of trans med ideology, because, like, it can feel a little bit like you're being attacked. But the thing about it is that, like, being gay is not a choice, and being trans is not a choice, and being bisexual is not a choice. So, like, when people do show up to these communities and are like, oh, I just want to experiment. It's like when a straight girl shows up to a gay bar. Like, that's what it kind of feels like. It's like, you shouldn't really be here. And that's annoying, because it's like they just want to dabble in what you are and, like, your identity. They want to just play around with it as though it's something they can just sort of walk into and then walk out of whenever they want. And that's what's annoying. And that does happen with some people who experiment with gender. And I think it's fine for the transgender community to try to educate and be like, hey, maybe what you're experiencing isn't gender dysphoria. Maybe what you are is not necessarily transgender. Maybe you're non-binary. Maybe you're somewhere else in the gender spectrum. Maybe you're some kind of gender fluid, but maybe you're not trans. And that's what I think voice cracks. And that's what a lot of it is, I think, is just people being like, hey, maybe you're not trans, maybe you're something else. And then people getting mad about it. And yeah, it sucks. Like, if you feel very strongly about an identity and people from that community are like, maybe you're not, though. And I'm not saying anyone's invalid. Like, if you feel deep down that you are not the gender you were assigned at birth, welcome to the trans community. Welcome. I'm not gonna sit here and act like anyone isn't allowed in the community, because who am I to, like, say any of that? I'm not a doctor. I'm not, you know, a psychiatrist. I don't have that expertise to say who is and who is not allowed in the trans community or who is not allowed to be trans. But I will say this: if you don't experience any dysphoria, if you like how everything about your body is, if you are fine with the pronouns you have been using your entire life and were given at birth, maybe you're not necessarily trans. Maybe that's just food for thought. Maybe that's just something to consider. I feel like the analogy of straight women going into a gay bar is valid at this point, just because that's what a lot of it feels like it is. People doing identity tourism.
To sit there and go, you're not trans, who the fuck are you? Who appointed you the king of trans people?
I would like to be the king of trans people. Can I apply for that? Or is that like an election thing? Or do you have to be born into it? Is there a trans king?
Okay, I haven't done that to Calvin. Calvin is valid as trans.
He's really just going off about Calvin right now. This is great. I love this. This is what this video was about the whole time. Why was I ever mad that he was coming for my community? He's just coming for one dude.
It has to be something about you, A, hating trans people.
You hate trans people. You, trans people. You hate trans people.
No, I'm really sorry you hate yourselves. But you need to keep that to yourself. You need to keep your loathing to yourself. You need to keep your bitterness to yourself.
Then why did you make a fucking poll if you want them to keep it to themselves? And also, I think it's very good for trans people to talk about dysphoria and what it feels like and how they cope with it. It's important for us to do that. Before I came out as trans, I've been out as a trans man for about 5 years. And even before that, I was very confused about my gender identity and was very much so exploring it. And the problem I was having is that I didn't have resources. Like, even on the internet, when I was trying to figure out what I was, there were not a lot of resources about being trans. And, like, slowly throughout the years, more and more have started coming out. And that's fucking awesome. And that comes from a place of people not liking themselves 100% and feeling the desire to, like, express that on the internet. That's how you can find stuff you relate to, is people making blog posts, people making YouTube videos, people talking on Twitter about their dysphoria and how they cope with that, how they've alleviated it, how they, you know, suffer with it and what it feels like. And all of that is awesome. Like, it sucks that we have dysphoria. It really does. It's awful. I wish I didn't have it. Every trans dude wishes he didn't have dysphoria. Coming out here and saying we need to keep that to ourselves, why are you trying to silence people? Why are you trying to silence the trans community? Like, how do you benefit from that? How does anyone benefit from people in the trans community being quiet about their suffering? That's what I want to know.
There are people in wheelchairs who are perfectly happy being crippled, okay? You're not a person in a wheelchair. You're not handicapped. But yet you act like it's all doom and gloom. You act like, oh, woe is me. Dude, you have all your parts. You have your arms, you have your legs. Some of you have parts you didn't sign up for, and that's tragic.
I will say this. There have been days where my dysphoria has been debilitating. Like, I have not been able to leave my house before because I had, like, intense dysphoria. For the most part, I don't have episodes like that, but there have been days where I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna pass. I gotta stay inside. And yeah, we're not in wheelchairs. We don't have, like, huge physical disabilities, but gender dysphoria is still a very valid mental issue that we have to cope with. And, like, telling someone, oh, well, other people have it worse than you, that's super shitty. Like, yeah, sure, there are people that might have worse conditions than trans people do, but to say we're not allowed to feel what we're feeling or we're not allowed to express what we're feeling, who the fuck are you?
Okay, if somebody came in here and started saying, girl, 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 you're a girl. To me, I identify as a boy, right? People start saying, hey, miss, how you doing? Personally, I would play with it. I would play with it a lot. I'd be like, oh, sweetie, all the time. Because I don't see why you're so fixated.
Because you're not trans. That's why. Because you're not trans. Someone going up to a cis dude and calling them a woman is nowhere near the level of offense that when it happens to a trans person. Whenever someone calls me a woman, I get so uncomfortable and kinda angry because you can tell I'm doing something. I don't really sound like a woman. I don't really look like a woman. And when someone clocks me like that and decides to use the wrong pronouns over and over again, it's infuriating. And you don't feel that way because you weren't born the, like, other gender and had to, like, work to try to present as that. You don't care because you're fucking Onision. That's why you don't care. Like, I feel like a lot of straight cis dudes would kind of get mad if you called them a woman. I have that, like, mental image in my head of me walking up to a cis dude and being like, hey, miss, and them punching me in the face. You don't understand it because you're not one of us, no matter how much you want to be, no matter how much you want to be the trans king that you claim, like, Calvin Guerra is trying to be. Like, you just would never understand. I'm getting heated. I'm actually sweating. And, like, this video is from a year ago. I know it's from a year ago. It is a year old, and I know that, like, maybe his opinions have changed. I doubt they have. But, like, I'm not even gonna go through with the rest of this video because I'm 17 minutes in of this 21-minute video, and a large portion of that was just him being pissy about Calvin Guerra talking about him. I am kind of curious on if he's made other videos about the trans community, and that's what I'm gonna find out. And if he has, oh boy. So the most recent video he has discussing, like, trans issues, again talking about Calvin Guerra. Why are you obsessed with Calvin Guerra? What did he say to you that has made you so angry? He's literally having a debate with someone who isn't even Calvin Guerra about whatever the issue was. This is the problem with me being so divorced from Onision, but also YouTube culture in general. I watch a ton of YouTube. I spend my entire day on YouTube, to be honest. I just let it autoplay on my Switch all day long while I'm doing other things. While I'm editing videos, while I'm working on cosplay stuff. Oh, so cringy, a cosplayer. But, like, I just let it play. And a lot of times, like, I'll run into Calvin Guerra, I'll see ContraPoints. Like, that's what YouTube knows I like to watch. And, like, I'm not even 100% sure on what Onision is going off about right now. And maybe that's because I don't watch all of the content of all of the YouTubers I kind of like. Maybe it's because I don't really have Twitter anymore. I don't follow any of these people on Twitter. I'm not constantly keeping up with their beefs. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I shouldn't be making these videos if I don't want to keep up with it. But, like, I originally started making my Onision video because I ran into a video about him and was just so blown away by who he was that I had to go deeper. I just noticed that, like, my hair and my shirt are the same color, and I'm not really 100% sure how to cope with that. I will say this. I agree with Calvin way more than I agree with Greg. Like, Onision has zero position to talk about what it's like to be trans, or what it's like to be in the trans community, or even what the trans community does to other trans people. He doesn't have any position to be doing that. At least Calvin is a trans man and, like, is in the community enough to have an opinion. Onision doesn't even have that, but he somehow thinks he's some sort of authority on it. As a trans man, I feel as though there is a lot of negativity in the trans community, but it's not necessarily all gatekeeping. It's just the fact that being trans does kind of suck right now, especially because there's that whole, like, controversy about the female symbol being removed from, like, tampon packaging or pad packaging, and, like, people are being really shitty to both trans men and trans women about the decision a company made. Like, at the end of the day, a company made a decision trying to be more inclusive, and instead of the company getting all the flack, it's literally trans dudes and trans women just getting railed on by TERFs and conservatives and angry feminists, and it fucking sucks. And I'll say it, like, even though Onision was like, oh, you shouldn't talk about how much you hate yourself, or, oh, how horrible it is to be trans, you know what? Being trans isn't fun all the time. It just isn't. Like, is it fun sometimes? Yeah, I love, like, all of my friends that I've made through being trans. I've met a lot of people through being on the internet, talking about being trans, and then we bonded over that. And, like, that's great. I love that sense of community and camaraderie you can get through that. If I could snap my fingers and just be a cis dude, I would do it. I would never want to be trans. Like, I would rather just be a cis guy, and that's, like, what I'm trying to achieve through transition. I want to just be the cis king. But ultimately, that's not possible. That's not what we can do, and I've accepted that, and that's why I'm proud of my trans identity. I think that's what it comes down to. Onision is confusing people being like, oh, being trans, it kind of sucks sometimes, for just completely hating everything about being trans, when really most trans people are very proud of their identity. It's just like, we understand that, you know, we're in an unfortunate position where we have to go through dysphoria and transition. I don't know why I'm sitting like this. I think I just wanted to show off my arms and how pale I am. Is this what you like, ladies? It's just frustrating, is what it is, to listen to Onision talk, just like in general, but also just about issues that he doesn't really need to be talking about. My fear about Onision making these videos is that what he's going to do is scare younger trans people, or even younger people who are questioning their gender identity, from seeking out the trans community. Because that's where they're gonna find better information. Sure, you can get all the scientific information online, but it's not very personal. It's very much so the facts we know. And while that's amazing that we have access to that, it can still feel better hearing it from someone that's gone through it, or, you know, at least feels like they can relate to you in some way. For me as a young trans person, watching YouTube videos of people either coming out or talking about their transition, all the, like, 1 year on T videos, that's what really helped me cement who I was. It made me realize that I wasn't alone, and that, like, what I was experiencing was something that could be looked into by medical personnel. I was able to be told that, yes, I have dysphoria. That's what I'm experiencing, and I'm not crazy. And all of that is dope. And if it wasn't for the trans community online, I wouldn't have gotten that. I would have potentially lived the rest of my life as a very unhappy woman. And instead, I am in an identity that I can be super comfortable in. I love my name now. I love going by he, him pronouns. And I also love helping younger trans people realize that too. The reason why the LGBT community is such a strong community is because it's pretty much founded on the idea of older people sort of giving guidance to the younger generation. If it wasn't for older gays, we wouldn't have a lot of the privileges we do. If it wasn't for older trans people, we wouldn't have a lot of the rights we do as trans people. Like, a trans woman literally was like the start of Stonewall. Ultimately, I feel like Onision's opinions about trans people are sort of harmful and sort of misplaced. And I hate that I'm about to say this. I think he needs to check his privilege, because he is speaking from a place of privilege. He is completely comfortable in his body. He's completely comfortable with the gender and sex he was born as. So he really doesn't need to be talking to the trans community about anything they're doing. Everyone's valid with their opinion, but whether or not they're allowed to voice that opinion and not face criticism, that's where I have a problem. Honestly, Onision just needs to leave trans people alone. Like, love your husband, accept your husband, but just leave the rest of us alone. And stop making 30-minute long YouTube videos just because Calvin Guerra said something that made you a little pissy. So what did we learn today? that Onision still exists and refuses to stop talking. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it was a lot different than my Onision video that I made before, but I really did feel like this was something I sort of had somewhat of a position on talking about, and it was something that was a little bit more near and dear to my heart than necessarily the rest of his controversies. If you did enjoy the video, do consider subscribing and leaving a like and leaving a comment. All of that feedback really does help me out. I do love hearing your opinions. Seeing the comments on my Onision Part 1 video have been an absolute joy. You guys have been so cool, save for, you know, the hate comments I expected, but you guys have been super cool, and I do love seeing all of your discussions, so definitely do consider the discussions down below. My only thing is, please, don't be shitty to trans people. But again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week coming up. Bye, guys.